everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Mia and I am a student teacher about to teach kindergarten next year, and this is everything you need to know about teacher interviews. So I watched so many videos going into my teacher interviews that I thought that I would just make one myself after having 5 interviews to be a teacher. This is such an exciting time in your life when you've gone to school for in my case 5 years of undergrad to get your bachelor's, and you've done your student teaching, and now you're to the point where you are going to enter your interviews. And it's so overwhelming because you feel like no amount of preparation can prepare you for when you walk in there. And in a sense, that's kind of true. You just have to go in there and you got to do it. But I did make a list of questions that I got asked, how I answered them, and general tips over what mindset you should have walking into these interviews and what you should wear and all of the things. So let's just get started. If you have not subscribed to my channel down below, please subscribe because I'm doing all videos related to teaching and lifestyle. I'm vlogging this week, a whole student teaching week in my life. And I also will be vlogging my entire first year teaching kindergarten next year. Tips for your interview. So there are some obvious ones like dress professionally and prepare. But when you talk about dressing professionally, and also disclaimer, all of these tips are my opinions and things that worked for me. You might not agree with me, and that's fine. But when you're dressing for your interview, I feel like there's a few routes you can go. You can dress really, really professionally and wear like black pants and a nice shirt. But the route that I took a lot was because I was interviewing for kindergarten positions, I was kind of dressing the part in a sense. I wore outfits that I wore to student teach in kindergarten. I wore a dress for one of mine. And of course, I kept it really professional, but I did wear some fun earrings and things like that to showcase my personality. And that goes with my tip number 1, which is to show your personality through your interview. When people are interviewing you, they really want to know what your personality is. It is about what kind of teacher you are, but it's also about what kind of presence you bring in to the interview. When you walk into the room, everyone's going to have a first impression of you. You're going to have a first impression of other people. And that's not necessarily something to be nervous about. It's just that you want to be yourself. So I am a pretty bubbly person. So I wore fun earrings and fun things because I love everything that's fun and kind of energetic and light. And I really wanted to come across that because that's my true authentic self. But if you are usually more of like serious or reserved, then maybe go with something that you are comfortable in and something that represents more of your personality, which might be black pants, maybe like a more fun shirt, or super like just professional from head to toe. Really wear something that's going to showcase your personality and make you ultimately super comfortable, because if you like what you're wearing and you're comfortable with what you're wearing, it's going to show. So dress professionally and show your personality through what you wear and ignore the dog. Tip number 2 is to smile and make eye contact with the people that are talking to you. So I don't mean go in there and be really weird and creepy and do a bunch of fake smiles, but smile when you're talking. This isn't a super serious everything interview. Of course, you're there to interview for a job, and in the sense that is serious, but you also want to smile and show that you are a normal human being and you're not a robot. My 3rd tip before going into your interview is when they're talking to you, really be careful to not interrupt them. Now, this might not be a problem for a lot of people, but if you have ADHD or in general are nervous, you might have the tendency to, before they really fully finish the question, you start to answer it. So let them, of course, say the whole question, which seems really kind of obvious, but just a reminder, let them say their whole question, and then even take about 2 to 3, maybe even 4 seconds to just digest the question before you start answering it, because although that might seem awkward, you're really allowing yourself to fully understand the question, think about it. And not only that, but they're seeing that you're being thoughtful in your response. So if they ask you a question, you could even say something like, let me think about that, and then respond. One thing you should not do, and my CT told me this before going into my interviews because she had sat in on interviews for the school that she was going to, and don't say, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. When you're nervous, you're gonna wanna fill the air with words, but just, it's better to honestly fill it with silence. Take a moment and be like, let me think about that, and then answer your question. Also, if you start to get off track or you start to just kind of go like this, just bring it back to kind of what you originally were trying to say, just like recap. Of course, show up early and on time, not on time, but early to the interview. Just shows professionalism, and overall be confident. So another thing I will say is I did not bring a teaching portfolio into my interview at all. This is probably the most controversial thing I'm going to say, but in my opinion, you do not need one. The majority of the time, there's probably anywhere from 4 to 8 people that are interviewing you, and they're interviewing a lot of people. They might want to see something, so it might be good to bring some type of brochure or something showcasing what you've done. But if you bring a really big stack of a binder showing your teaching portfolio, the chances are they're really not going to look at it because they don't have time. And it doesn't reflect badly on you to bring that. If you want to bring that and you feel comfortable, you can, but in no way should you feel that you need to bring a teaching portfolio. I did not bring a teaching portfolio to one of my interviews. I did not bring a teaching portfolio to one of them. I really feel like this is controversial, but that's my opinion. So now going into the actual questions that you got asked. So you've made it into the interview, you've sat down, make sure you sit up straight and confident, and you, like I said, smile, take a deep breath, and they'll most likely get you water or something, and then they'll be like, okay, let's get started with the interview. And then you're gonna like be like, but just like breathe. So usually the first question is, tell me about yourself. When you tell them about yourself, what they really want to know is about your education. They're not wanting to be like, well, I, like to go skiing and whatever. Like, those are great things, but they really want to know when they're saying, tell me about yourself, about your education. So this is how I answered, tell me about yourself. I said, well, my name is Mia. I am from Des Moines, Iowa. I recently moved here with my husband after we got married. I went to Grandview University in Des Moines and got my bachelor's in elementary education with a endorsement in reading and language arts. I'm currently student teaching at blank. I am student teaching there for 6 weeks, and then I will be student teaching at blank. And I'm not going to tell you the names of those, but I said where I was student teaching, and then I said I'm really interested in teaching the lower elementary grades. I did play basketball at Grandview University. I am a student athlete. When I'm not teaching, I really enjoy reading, working out, and spending time with my family and friends. So as you can see, the hobbies section of my answer was really small. I included it in there, but what they really wanted to know was, where did I go to school? What is my major / my endorsements, if I have any? Where am I student teaching, and what grade do I want to teach? That's really what they want to know, and then kind of throw in whatever else. Number 2, why do you want to teach at blank? When you are doing your interviews, make sure you research a little bit about where you're going to interview at so that you have something to say. Because I know, honestly, a lot of times you go into interviews and you're applying to any and every job and you don't specifically know why you want to teach there, you just really want a job. So when you know where you're going, search them on social media. Twitter is really good for education. Facebook, Instagram, maybe. In general, just kind of search what maybe their behavior management is or whatever. So do that, and then you will be able to answer that question. And just, so for example, I said, I really like the district that this school is in. I really like that you guys use PBIS. I'm really familiar with PBIS. Or I really like that you guys use the Jan Richardson curriculum. I'm really familiar with that curriculum. Tie it into something that you have researched about the school and that you know about. And say, and I really think this is a great environment for me to grow as a first-year teacher. Number 3, you might get asked what your teaching philosophy is. Have your teaching philosophy basically memorized. Mine is rooted in positive reinforcement. I believe that students can succeed when they are safe and given tools to succeed. I believe in positively reinforcing students to help make sure that they're capable of being successful. My role as the teacher is to help students reach their highest potential. Something along like what you believe, but make it sound natural, not like super scripted. Have it basically memorized, and then you can pull in your other answers. You can refer back to your answer of your teaching philosophy. How do you plan a lesson from start to finish? I did not get asked this, but if you did, I would basically say that, and they might ask you something along the lines, and what they're looking for is you saying that you would start with state standards and objectives, and then use the curriculum to guide your lessons, and then add and take out where your students need differentiation. Because of course they have the curriculum for a reason. They want you to follow it. Next question, how do you use assessment to drive instruction? I got asked this in every single interview I did. And I basically just said that I used data to make my math and reading groups. I used data to make sure that people were in the groups that they needed to be in. I would collect exit tickets or pre-assessment, in general formative assessments, to see where my students are at continually. I would just use the data that I collected from, for us, we use iReady. So using iReady data with the formative assessments and with other assessments that can tell me where they're at in reading and math, to put them in correct groups and overall have an understanding of where they're at academically. How do you communicate with parents? Got asked this, and you will get asked how you communicate with parents, most likely. I would say like you have a 99% chance of getting asked this. I first stated that communication with parents is extremely important to me. I want to work with parents to, as a team, to help their student or their child be successful. So I kind of stated that, and then I said that I will use Class Dojo. I really like Class Dojo. I said I've been using, my CT uses Class Dojo to communicate with parents because it's super nice, because you can see when they read your message, they can see when you've read their message, and also you can send pictures of their child during the day to see what they're doing, and overall it's a really easy form of communication between the teacher and the parent. I also said at the very beginning of the year, I will call home and just talk about their student and how well their student is doing, because I don't want the first form of communication between a parent and I to be negative. I want every single parent to have a positive conversation with me about their child before any other problems arise. So find anything that you can praise the child for, and then have a conversation with the parent about that student. Next question, and also my favorite question is about classroom management. What is your classroom management, or how do you create a positive classroom environment? I said my classroom management is rooted in positive reinforcement, just as my teaching philosophy is. I said I believe that praising students that are doing the right behavior is just, if not more effective than scolding students that are doing the wrong behavior. When I was student teaching in kindergarten, I noticed that if I praised a student for coming to the carpet quietly, the students that were being louder or not doing what they were supposed to be doing would notice that, and they would fix their behavior. I didn't even have to confront them to have them fix that behavior. Also, I talked about how it is so important to establish classroom procedures and rules, especially in the lower elementary grades, because if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, and if they have not practiced what they are supposed to be doing, then there is no way for me to expect them to know what to do effectively and efficiently. I also set really high expectations for my students, so I hold them accountable to that. If they do not do something right, I will have them go back and do it again, but I will keep my conversation and my tone light towards them. I'll have whole group points, small group points, and individual points. So for whole group, I really like student versus teacher, where if the students are doing what they're supposed to be doing as an entire class, they get a point. If they're not, I get a point, and we kind of keep track, and we set some sort of reward that they would like to work towards, that once they get to a certain amount of class points, we do like a class party or like some sort of thing that they have told me that they want to do, and we do that together. Small group table points. I like to do this and have different table groups be the example of coming to the carpet or lining up or whatever, and they get points that way as well. Same kind of system, but it's just they're small table groups. And then individually, I like to have some sort of individual thing. At my school, they do compliments, so you get a compliment if you have done something really well, or you're following the school behavior plan, or you were just a really kind friend. Really anything that they deserve a compliment for, I'll give them a compliment. So I have those 3 tiers of classroom management: whole group, small group, and individual. And I also like to remind every student that the procedures and the expectations are needed. They need to know those expectations in order to be successful. The next question that they might ask, and I did get asked this a lot, is if you've tried all of your classroom management strategies and the student becomes defiant, meaning that they're just saying no, or they start to get violent, throwing chairs or objects of some sort, what are you going to do? My answer is that my students' safety is my number one priority. I would evacuate the entire room, and then I would call for help, either call the principal or some behaviorist, if you have a behavior management person at the school, to come down and help me with the situation, because obviously I cannot leave my other 20-something students outside for that one student. So I'd still be watching them and make sure that they're not a harm to others or themselves, but I would get help and make sure all my other students were safe. And then once they came back later on to the classroom, we would have a private conversation about what sort of different actions we can take next time, and just kind of walk them through that social emotional situation. The next question that you might get asked is, if I were to walk in your classroom, what would I see? I would really talk about, for me, you would see a lot of students collaborating. You would see a lot of hands-on work, different projects. You would see a lot of manipulatives. If it was during math, you would overall just see students collaborating and working as a team, because I really believe that students should not just be talked at, that they need to be involved. How will you incorporate social emotional learning into your classroom? I just talked about how, as the teacher, I want to model that it's okay to make mistakes, and that when I do make mistakes, or if I mess up, that I say them out loud. I'm like, oh, I really didn't mean to do that, or I didn't mean to say that, or I can get better at this, and just really showing a growth mindset and talking through my emotions, and also letting the students know that teachers have bad days too, and that sometimes I don't feel my very best, and I don't feel like I'm doing everything perfectly, and that that's okay, and that I'm just going to try to do better tomorrow. Or I really voice and express those opinions out loud to the students, so that they know that I'm a person too, and that I'm no higher being than they are, and that I've just had more years of practicing how to regulate my emotions. The next question is, what does your literacy block look like? Now, this could be different for everybody, but basically mine starts with a mini lesson, about 15 minutes, either a read aloud and mini lesson, or just a read aloud or just a mini lesson, where I get students engaged. We read a book. I teach them a mini lesson, some sort of skill. And then after that, I move on to my reading group. So then I pull my reading groups back, and I start working on key things that they need to work on in kindergarten or whatever grade you're teaching. And then while I am meeting at the back table with my group, the other students are on Lexia, or they're doing Must Do May Do and working on some sort of skill that we have been talking about in our mini lessons. And then we just rotate every 15 minutes or so. We are rotating, but every student is either working on technology as one station, or they're working on the direct skill that we learned in our mini lesson. And then the last group will be working with me. What does your math block look like? Kind of similar. So I'd start with the whole group lesson. We would do some sort of math warm-up, interactive warm-up, and then we'd move on to what the lesson is that we're learning today, what skill we're learning. We'd learn the skill, practice it a few times together. Students would use whiteboards or blocks or some sort of manipulatives to practice in small groups with each other. Then I would send all the students back away and go in groups around the room to play some sort of game that is working on the skill that we are learning. Then we would come back together and talk about our findings, and then wrap up the math. So a little bit different. If I needed to pull small groups in math, I would also, when students are playing games and stuff like that to practice that skill, that's when I would pull my math small group. So that's kind of how my math would work. You might get asked, what role does technology play in the classroom? I talked about in my interview that technology is not the main source of information for the students. It is merely a tool for teachers to help engage students, and it should be a short part of your lesson to just enhance it. It is not the main bulk of the lesson. Like, you're not just going to play a video for most of the time. If anything, the technology should be short and should just enhance what they're already doing. That is it for the teacher interview questions. Another thing, you're going to want to bring about at least 2 to 3 questions that you could ask them. One would be, what is the next step in the hiring process, which is basically you asking like when you'll hear back, what the next step would be. If you're a first year teacher, you can ask, what professional development opportunities do you have for first year teachers? I ask that a lot. Another one is, what are qualities that you look for in an ideal candidate? And they'll answer that. And then the last question you could ask is, what do you believe your school culture is like? / why do you think that this school is such a special place? That last one, why do you think that your school is such a special place, really resonated with a lot of the interview committee, because they get to talk about their school and they love their school. So they get to kind of shine light on that. Those are my questions that I got asked in my interviews, and those are kind of the way that I would answer it. I'm sorry if anything was unclear, because sometimes my thoughts come out really a lot, but I do think that being confident, smiling, making eye contact, and overall just taking a deep breath and answering the questions that you know, you're gonna be fine. And also do your research ahead of time. Watch videos like this to practice. And I'm so excited for anyone that is doing interviews this month to get their first teaching job. I know it's such an exciting time. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below, and I hope that you're having a great day or a great week, and I will see you in my next video.